Greetings, Mayor Jeff Schielke speaking to you on Friday, July 29th, 2022. And we're having quite a running week here in Batavia with a lot of different activities and impacts from even outside the city impacting us. One of the things I want to do at the very beginning of this talk this afternoon is remind everyone, and I've been talking about this almost every call the last few, is the Batavia Police Department is experiencing a lot of what I guess we're feeling is almost targeted attacks on senior citizens in our community, with people using technology to try to get folks to give up their credit card numbers, their checking account numbers, their driver's licenses, any of their personal information, which can then somehow be turned around on the internet, and people can access various financial things that any senior citizen has. And I've read some of the reports that we've issued here recently amongst the police department, and there's been some very strong high numbers of money that have been removed from citizens' accounts and whatever. So I just want to again encourage everyone, and specifically our senior citizens, to be very cautious if you're going to entertain or talk to anybody specifically on the phone or over the computer about doing any type of financial planning or paying a bill, or they're telling you you didn't pay a bill and you have, but you're going to send some money to some place that's never going to go where it's intended. It's going into the perpetrator's pocket. So just be very careful. I can't name specific situations, but they seem to multiply every time I turn around, and we want to make sure that Batavians are aware of the dangers of trying to deal with somebody over the computer who may be doing something very illegal. So know who you're talking to, I guess, is the bottom line in the whole thing. On a more positive note, I want to just put a shout out of appreciation to the Batavia Main Street folks. Despite a lot of weather challenges, they seemingly pulled off a pretty successful party in the park last Saturday night on the east side of City Hall. I had a very nice crowd, and there was a number of, what I found when I got there, there were a number of newly arrived Batavia residents. I had, I think it was at least 5 or 6 different folks approach me and say, "You're the mayor?" "Yes, I am." "Well, I just moved here from here or there or whatever, and I just got a couple questions specifically about my house, my neighborhood, or the history of something in Batavia." And so it's, I met some very positive, really nice people that were in the community and were here and happy to be here and have moved from other parts of the region. I had some other folks tell me that they were in Batavia for a family reunion, and they had liked what they saw and were thinking about trying to find a place to maybe move themselves to in the future. So there's just a lot of things that happen when you hold these events. So the one last week was, despite the weather, and they had to really watch it, and to the credit of our Batavia ESTA guys, they kept the radar screen on, and so they monitored in case any bad storms were coming, because we did have some on Saturday morning that really did do a lot of uptake on the whole situation. They had to take some stuff down and put it back up and whatever. But we got the clearance from the Weather Bureau that they thought Batavia would be cleared during the hours of from 3 till about 11 or 12 at night, and as they told us, that's exactly what happened. And we did get a little rain later in the night, but everybody was broken down and had removed all their stuff and gone home. So we got a successful party in the park underway under Main Street's direction. The next one that's coming up is going to be Sunday, August 7th, and that'll start at 4 p.m. on North River Street around State Street. And that's going to be the Batavia Dinner Table event, which is this very long table that starts up by Wilson Street and continues north up River Street to wherever the tickets stop, as far as the number of people who have bought a ticket to come. And it's just you come down and they bring on the dishes and pass them around, and you sit next to people maybe you've never known before, and you get a chance to talk to them and learn about them and talk about your town and have some nice conversation. So that's going to be August 7th, Sunday afternoon, 4 to 6 p.m. That's again under the sponsorship of Batavia Main Street, and I believe that the food pantry will be the benefactors of any money that is raised because of that event. And as a further resolve of that, I would share with you that the tickets this year are $85 a person, so it's not an inexpensive cause to participate in, but it's the most worthy cause, and I certainly, if you're of a mind, I would encourage you to go, and if nothing else, you know, take it in and see what it's like for the very first time. So anyway, that's the kind of the announcements I have for the moment of things. The other thing I just wanted to make mention is I seem to be over on the far west side of Batavia with some regularity with all the stuff on Randall Road and other things that are going on, and so every day I get the chance to drive by Batavia's football field where I see the new stands and are being erected, and it looks like Coach Perron is going to have quite an impressive playing field with his turf grass and his new bleachers and sitting areas, and so Batavia High School football is alive and well, and from every indication I'm getting, there's going to have the field ready for the first game, which won't be the first. I think they don't play till maybe the fourth game of this season this year, because they were worried about if there was going to be some delay in construction, and I haven't heard that there is, but I can tell you that much of the new bleachers are up and are taking shape, and I think it's going to be a very, very proud thing for Batavia to have. I know that the Batavia High School Classes of 1966 and 67 are going to have a joint class reunion on homecoming weekend, which is September 16th and 17th. And on the 17th, they're going to have like a class party, and Bob Hansen down at Funway has been kind enough to allow them to have the room adjacent to his bowling alley down there, and so they're just invited to come down, and Hansen has plenty of refreshments and liquid topics, or liquid, I don't want to say liquor, but he does have a number of things to drink. I don't know, let's just leave it at that. And so we would put that word out. If you're a member of the class of 66 or 67 and you haven't heard of a reunion yet, and 66 is a whole year behind because they got hit right in the middle of the COVID situation. And as a result of that, they didn't have a reunion last year, so now 67's turn, and 67's trying to get the two classes to kind of come together, and because they were all pretty close when they all went to high school together, and I know about that because I'm a member of the class of 67, so it's all amongst friends here, and so I think it could be a real fun event. So if you know somebody in 66 or 67, tell them that it's going to be Saturday afternoon, September 17th, from about 4 till about 10. And at that age, you don't necessarily want to stay up later and hang around, so we're going to have an early evening thing, and we're going to have a bunch of pictures of various things that happened in the two classes in 66 and 67. Could be a very fun night. So for those involved in that, that's the word I want to try to spread. And finally today, I want to share an experience I had this past keep having to look at my calendar here. This past Wednesday, the 27th, I went up to Geneva and I got on the train. I hadn't been on the train in well over a year. And I got on a train and had a brand new car I got to ride on. And we went into downtown Chicago, and I got off at Ogilvie. And I walked over to a building on 111 South Wacker Drive, which is right down near the Willis Tower. And the reason I went was I had been invited specifically by the Mayor's Office of the City of Chicago and the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, which I am the chairman of the Council of Mayors, which I think was probably the big reason I got invited. And they were going to have a meeting of the Recovery Task Force Advisory Committee, which was created several years back for the region to kind of pick themselves up and get things restarted after the COVID recovery started, and we got rid of the COVID thing in the region. And so as a result, I think what was kind of planned here is that Wednesday was the day it was going to be announced, and it was, that Google was going to buy the old Thompson Center on LaSalle Street in Chicago and turn that into a new major office complex for Google, which we were told is going to be a 24-hour-a-day operation, open 365 days a year, because they never can really close themselves, being in the business they are on the computer. But they are taking over that building. The city of Chicago state of Illinois has sold the building, but they're using some of the money to buy a bigger building right nearby, so they're keeping all their jobs in downtown. but it appears that several thousand new jobs will be coming into downtown Chicago as a result of the Google arrival. And it was interesting, when I got to the meeting, I was approached by Sam Skinner, who many of you know was very active in state government 20, 30, 40 years ago. He is vice chairman of this recovery committee along with Mayor Lightfoot. And right away when he came over to me and said, you know, I need to have you give me some information about Fermilab and their expansion, because he says, between what we're announcing today in Chicago and what Fermilab is putting out there in your area, there's several thousand new jobs will be coming to the region as a result of this. And this is at a time when, you know, we've lost a lot of jobs through shutdowns as it resolved around the COVID thing. But suddenly now we have some really good news. We have a couple of them. And so I shared with Sam what I knew about, you know, that we're going to have, I believe, a formal breakground. They had it scheduled here a couple weeks ago, but they postponed it, I think, because they weren't quite sure COVID had left us. But that will be coming, and at least the initial advertisements of the neutron accelerator, which we're going to be building out there, is it's going to have, you know, between 1,800 and 2,000 new jobs out there. So that'll be a real shot in the arm for the area, and specifically Batavia and Batavia businesses or restaurants ought to have a lot of new customers coming in wanting to eat in Batavia because they may be there doing something at Fermilab. And so the other thing that Mr. Skinner wanted me to tell him about was the new plaque that's on the door at Fermilab. And I told him, well, I did know about that. That was put in about almost 2 years ago now in November, and that was a gift from the International Electrical Engineers Association, which is a worldwide agency of electrical engineers. And what they wanted to highlight and thank Fermilab was, and the plaque says it when you walk in the door, that on the Fermilab property, and given the great minds that work out there, the technology was created that allowed for the introduction and invention of the MRI medical research machine. And it's clearly on the plaque at the door at Fermilab that says that that technology that put the MRI on the street and probably now has saved potentially millions of lives, because it gives the medical world the ability to look right into anybody's body and see what's going on. Is something broke? Is there a clot? Is there bleeding? Whatever. And so that's a very strong medical tool now in place, and Batavia gets a lot of credit, I think, or not Batavia, but certainly Fermilab gets a lot of credit for being the location where that was really put together, and something that we should all be very proud of that happened in our community. One thing that was all said, and then when I was there, Mayor Lightfoot arrived at the meeting. She was a little bit late because she was in the process of entertaining the executive board of the Democratic National Committee, who were in Chicago viewing potential sites for the Democratic Convention in 2024. And so she was involved in that, and she had with her administrative assistant, a young gal by the name of Kelsey Nulf. And when I'm sitting at this meeting, all of a sudden I see Kelsey's at the other side of the room, and she's waving at me. And the reason she's waving at me is she's a Batavia girl. And she's a graduate of Batavia High School, and is now the right hand of the mayor of Chicago as far as knowing where she needs to be, what's going on, who's talking to her. I've seen her carrying computers and police radios and all kinds of stuff that she writes down messages and keeps track of things. And she goes with the mayor everywhere. So while we were there, I asked Kelsey if maybe we could have a picture taken of her and I with Mayor Lightfoot. And the mayor was most happy to correspond. So I'm going to hold this up so we can let everybody see what Kelsey Nulf looks like. And many of those who went to Batavia High School 15, 20 years ago knew her, because she's a graduate of Batavia High School. So I think Kelsey is a good example of what Batavia schools have been able to produce over the years. And when you got one of your graduates who is now the administrative assistant to the mayor of the city of Chicago, that's not a light job, and it's not an unimpressive job. It's a job full of challenges and notoriety and publicity. And Batavia should be very, very proud of Kelsey Nulf, because she really has, I think, made this town look like it, specifically its school system, like it is a great place to live. And I share this because in my conversations last week at the party in the park, I had several people talk to me about Batavia and some of the things it produces, and one of them was certainly the quality of the school system. And several told me that was the reason why they, despite what they consider to be higher taxes, they were happy to pay them, because they thought the school system had an excellent record and of success, and college graduates that went there and whatever. So Batavia, I guess at the end of the day, has a lot to brag about, a lot to be proud of. And I just have had a week where a lot of that's been driven right into me, because I've seen it firsthand on a variety of fronts. And so I think, and despite all the COVIDs and the hot weather and the rains and everything else that's happened, we have a lot to be pleased and smile about in Batavia. And so on that, I'm going to end this week's call knowing that I've been bragging here a little bit today, but Batavia gives me a lot to brag about. And as the mayor, I'm very thankful for what other people are doing to make this town really shine as a proud place to proudly call your home. Have a good week, and we'll talk to you next week.